Think you know geography? Wait until you hear about places that are gaining land, losing land, and even shifting position on the map. By 2025, seas are disappearing, deserts are spreading, and entire nations are adjusting their borders without war or treaties. These aren't just textbook curiosities, they're changes affecting how millions of people live. From cities that straddle invisible lines to countries wrestling with rising waters, the Earth looks very different than what you remember from school. And in some cases, one city alone shows just how global geography can feel without stepping on a plane. A city split between two continents. In Istanbul, geography shapes daily life in a way few other cities can claim. It is the only metropolis on Earth that exists on two continents, Europe and Asia, divided by the Bosphorus Strait. For locals, commuting might mean taking a bus, train, or ferry, and in the span of minutes, stepping from one continent to another without leaving city limits. The idea sounds almost impossible until you realize that for millions of residents, it's just routine. The Bosphorus itself is far more than a scenic waterway. This narrow strait connects the Black Sea to the Sea of Marmara, and by extension to the Mediterranean. Its role as a maritime highway makes it one of the world's most strategic choke points, with thousands of vessels passing through each year carrying goods, commodities, and energy supplies. Every ship that moves along its waters highlights why the city's location has global economic and political weight, not just local significance. On a more personal level, the geography divides culture as visibly as it divides the land. Wander through a district on the European side, and history presses in from every corner: Ottoman palaces, Byzantine relics, and the remains of empires that once ruled vast territories. Cross over by bridge or ferry, and the rhythm changes. Markets hum with energy, neighborhoods expand with modern construction, and traditions run deep into the heart of daily life. Two ways of living stand side by side, separated only by water, but linked by centuries of shared history. Moving between the two sides is unlike any other commute on the planet. Trains run through underwater tunnels, ferries carve their way across the strait, and thousands of cars travel daily over massive suspension bridges. In most cities, crossing a river means entering another borough. In Istanbul, you change continents in a single crossing. Its geography turned practical, built into the design of everyday routines. Istanbul is a megacity continuing to grow, with its location demanding constant expansion of infrastructure to support a population spread across two continents. Its blend of culture, trade, and strategy proves how maps shape reality more directly than we might expect. And Istanbul is only one example. Sometimes geography can fool the eye entirely, especially when it makes a desert city appear further west than the Pacific coast. The desert city, that's west of Los Angeles. When most people picture the western edge of the United States, Los Angeles usually comes to mind. It sits on the Pacific Ocean, lined with beaches and coastal cliffs, the very image of a West Coast city. So it feels natural to assume Los Angeles lies farther west than any city in Nevada, which is landlocked, mountainous, and arid. But check a map closely, and the result flips that assumption entirely. Reno, an inland desert city, actually sits farther west than Los Angeles. The explanation comes down to the bend in California's coastline. Rather than dropping straight south, the coast angles sharply to the southeast as it nears Mexico. That curve pulls Los Angeles eastward in longitude. Reno, meanwhile, is tucked into the Great Basin, far from the ocean, but positioned on straighter lines of longitude that keep it farther west than LA. The numbers make it clear. Reno sits at about 119.8 degrees west, while Los Angeles is at 118.2 degrees west. That puts Reno roughly 83 miles farther west than the city that fronts the Pacific Ocean. It sounds minor, but longitude is exact, and on this measure, Reno comes out ahead. Maps trick you, longitude matters more than image. This oddity even shows up in the rhythm of the day. Reno often experiences slightly later sunsets than Los Angeles, which surprises anyone who expects the coast to guarantee the last light. Locals sometimes take pride in pointing this out, turning their supposed inland disadvantage into a playful boast that their desert sunsets outlast LA's coastal ones. It's a reminder that geography refuses to follow the neat patterns we imagine. Coastlines bend, land shifts, and assumptions fall apart when faced with precise coordinates. What seems obvious on first glance doesn't always hold up under closer measurement. And just as land placement can surprise us in the deserts of Nevada, massive changes can also happen in the frozen extremes of the planet, changes that defy expectation in an entirely different way. Antarctica grows in size. We often hear reports of Antarctica shrinking, glaciers retreating, ice sheets thinning, and shelves breaking into the sea. But the picture isn't always so straightforward. Some edges of the continent temporarily press outward, forming thicker shelves that give the appearance of surface growth. At the same time, though, long-term satellite records show the continent as a whole is losing mass on a massive scale, measured in billions of tons each year. Both things happen at once: localized gains and continent-wide decline. That contrast comes from how Antarctica works as a system. The land beneath is draped in ice, so thick it holds about 90% of Earth's freshwater. Where glaciers meet the ocean, huge floating platforms called ice shelves push outward. Unlike seasonal sea ice that freezes and melts in place, these shelves are extensions of land ice moving slowly into surrounding waters. If they expand, they don't immediately raise sea levels. But if they fracture and collapse, the glaciers feeding them accelerate, and that melt does contribute to sea rise. Expansion can be a signal of stress just as much as it can look like growth. The bigger picture is clear. NASA and other agencies have shown that Antarctica has lost trillions of tons of ice since the 1990s. That translates to roughly 1 millimeter a year of added sea level rise, making Antarctica responsible for about a third of the global annual increase. Even when certain shelves advance for a period, the continent overall continues to hollow out, shedding weight from its interior while surface outlines shift around the edges. Understanding these changes matters far beyond the southern pole. The system is dynamic, with cracks opening in some places while shelves spread in others, but the long-term direction points toward loss. The rate of global sea level rise has already doubled over the past century, and Antarctica's changes are a major piece of that acceleration. What makes this even more striking is how it contrasts with other parts of the world. While Antarctica's outlines may sometimes extend outward, yet mask a deeper depletion, there are places elsewhere where land is being added each year in the opposite direction, expanding naturally even in the face of rising seas. A country that grows every year without war. Most countries threatened by rising seas are losing coastlines, but Bangladesh is one of the few that sees land appear year after year. Without moving a border post or signing a treaty, the country is expanding naturally. This growth comes from the great river systems that run through it, chiefly the Ganges and the Brahmaputra. Carrying immense volumes of sediment down from the Himalayas, these rivers spread into a vast delta where the silt is deposited. Over time, those deposits build up into new surfaces, some of them evolving into permanent land. It is a form of quiet expansion, playing out on riverbanks and coastal edges where the landscape seems to redraw itself season after season. These new areas are known locally as chars. Some chars are fleeting, vanishing with the next round of floods, or being reshaped by strong currents during the monsoon. Others endure, stabilizing long enough to be used by communities. Farmers quickly adapt, planting rice, vegetables, and laying claim to fresh grazing plots within months of the land's formation. From above, the delta resembles a living patchwork of shifting ground, temporary islands rising, green shoots of farmland taking hold, and braided channels adjusting their routes. It is rare to see a nation gain territory this way, highlighting just how unusual Bangladesh's situation is compared with many island and coastal states that steadily lose land to the ocean. The paradox is that Bangladesh is expanding and eroding at the same time. Rising seas continue to threaten villages and farmland nearer to the coast, where saltwater intrusion displaces residents and undermines agriculture. Yet upstream, sediment deposits create ground that can sustain life, offsetting some of what is lost further south. Reports from the United Nations and World Bank underscore this tension. The country experiences both gains and losses, sometimes in the same season, leaving its geography in constant negotiation with the forces of climate and water. For a nation with more than 175 million people packed into one of the most densely populated regions on Earth, every acre of new land matters. Each patch supports families, strengthens food production, and offers rough balance against the pressure of encroaching seas. Bangladesh illustrates how geography can quietly and continually reshape a country's outline. And while its transformation shows the power of rivers to redraw borders, another example lies in sheer size, an immense nation where geography is measured not by acres gained, but by the struggle of living across countless time zones at once. The country that controls 11 time zones. Russia is the rare example of a country where geography doesn't just shape borders, it shapes time itself. It remains the only nation on Earth that spans 11 time zones, stretching across 1/8 of the planet's land area. At any given moment, different regions of the country occupy entirely different points on the daily clock. Morning, afternoon, and night all exist at once within its borders. The contrast is sharp when you look at two edges of the map. In Kaliningrad by the Baltic Sea, a workday may be beginning at sunrise. Meanwhile, across the Bering Strait in Chukotka, people are winding down for sleep. That's nearly half a day of difference within the same country's borders. For many Russians, even a simple phone call to relatives several regions away can feel like international communication, because the hours often don't line up at all. This time spread is not just a trivia point, it carries real effects on daily life and national operations. Businesses and government agencies must constantly adjust schedules to bridge hours that rarely overlap. Airlines crossing Russia can spend 8 or 9 hours in the air without ever leaving Russian skies, moving gradually through those shifting time boundaries. The iconic Trans-Siberian Railway journeys across nearly a week of changing clocks before reaching its eastern destination. Ordinary commuters, travelers, and workers learn to navigate time the way others navigate distance. Comparisons highlight how unusual this is. The United States, often thought of as immense, covers only 4 main time zones on the mainland. Russia's 11 reveal scale on an entirely different level, demanding that its infrastructure, communications, and even personal routines operate with a constant awareness of time's uneven spread. It is a daily reminder that geography doesn't only stretch space, but also warps perception of time itself. Living there means recognizing that your day is just one version of countless others unfolding inside the same national borders. The experience makes Russia feel like a condensed version of the globe, where human activity cannot possibly sink from one end to the other. But if time zones represent one extreme of geography's impact, the opposite problem appears elsewhere, where the issue is space itself vanishing faster than people can adapt. A sea that's disappearing fast. Visit the Dead Sea today, and the shoreline is not where you expect it to be. Over recent decades, the waters have been shrinking at a pace so visible that walking to the edge means crossing wide stretches of land that were once underwater. Each year the basin retreats further, turning familiar coastlines into dry ground and leaving behind a reminder of how quickly a landscape can change. The Dead Sea occupies a unique place in geography and science. Sitting more than 1,300 feet below sea level, it is the lowest exposed point on Earth. Its waters are also some of the saltiest on the planet, holding concentrations nearly 10 times higher than most oceans. Those conditions create the famous experience of floating with ease, attracting travelers who come to test the buoyancy and cover themselves with mineral-rich mud. The bright salt crusts along the shore sparkle in the sun, yet underneath the spectacle lies an environmental crisis that may end this phenomenon within a few decades. Scientists warn that if the present decline continues unchecked, the Dead Sea could all but disappear around mid-century. The reasons are well known. Natural evaporation in a desert climate combined with human diversion of water from the Jordan River and surrounding tributaries, which once refreshed the basin. With less inflow and relentless summer heat, balance tips toward loss. The receding shoreline is not merely a shift in scenery, but a disruption of a system that took millions of years to form. That disruption goes beyond the water's edge. As the sea level falls, hidden salt layers underground begin to dissolve, leaving cavities that collapse into sudden sinkholes. These openings have destroyed farms, highways, and even tourist facilities. Entire stretches of coast are now scattered with dangerous craters, changing the region from a vibrant resort area into an unpredictable hazard zone. The crisis also spills over into politics and economics. Israel, Jordan, and Palestine all border the Dead Sea and depend on its resources, yet efforts to save it are complicated by competing needs for freshwater and the difficulty of large-scale restoration projects. Tourism, a vital economic driver, faces steep decline as access points shift and safety risks increase. What was long seen as an eternal sea is proving vulnerable, a natural wonder slipping toward memory. Other places, however, tell a very different story, not of vanishing land, but of expansion, where coastlines have been deliberately pushed outward to create something entirely new. The country that expanded by 25%. Some countries manage vanishing coastlines, but Singapore has taken the opposite approach. Since the 1960s, this small nation has reshaped itself through land reclamation, steadily adding to its territory in a way few places have achieved. Maps from independence, compared to those today, reveal a striking difference. Entire stretches of coastline didn't exist back then, but now support vital infrastructure and daily life. The method may sound simple in concept, yet requires massive engineering. By layering sand, rock, and engineered fill into nearby waters, Singapore has built new patches of land where none existed before. In a nation where every square kilometer counts, these gains carry significant weight. Some of the country's most important sites now sit on reclaimed ground. Changi Airport, one of the busiest global hubs, operates largely on land created by reclamation, handling tens of millions of travelers every year. New harbors, industrial areas, and residential neighborhoods also rise on space that used to be open water. For a territory smaller than many world cities, this expansion has been essential. Without room to naturally spread, Singapore's only option has been to build its own foundation. Reclaimed land is not left as empty space. It is immediately put to use as housing estates, industrial parks, and recreation zones for a population nearing 6 million. In effect, engineering has given the city-state the ability to compete economically while avoiding the limitations of its geography. The land created is deliberate, planned, and packed with purpose. What makes Singapore's expansion unique is that it is peaceful. Most historical map changes came through conquests or disputes, yet Singapore's borders grew through construction, not conflict. There were no battles to fight, only machines and engineers steadily redrawing the nation's edge. This transformation shows that geography can be negotiated by human choice rather than by accident or force. It is a clear example of adaptation in the face of natural limits. Today, Singapore's coastline looks nothing like it did half a century ago, proving that growth can be engineered rather than conquered. But while this city-state has expanded its footprint on the map, the other extreme exists as well, where a whole recognized country is so small that it can be compared to the size of a simple city park. The world's smallest country versus a city park. You might picture Central Park in New York as just an urban escape tucked between skyscrapers, but when measured against the world's smallest country, its scale becomes astonishing. Central Park covers far more land than Vatican City, reminding us that what seems modest in one place can utterly outsize an independent nation in another. An area most visitors stroll through in a single afternoon surpasses the entire territory of the Catholic Church's center of power and one of Europe's most historic states. Vatican City is recognized as the smallest country in existence, occupying only about 0.2 square miles. To put that in context, the entire country could fit inside Central Park many times over. From above, its outline appears more like a district within Rome than a state of its own. Yet the Vatican operates independently with borders, sovereignty, and functions that rival much larger nations. Passing from Rome into Vatican territory isn't just a change of neighborhood. It is a shift across an international boundary that plays out in just a few steps. The Vatican's position as a sovereign state was secured in 1929 through the Lateran Treaty. Since then, it has acted with full independence, maintaining its own embassies, currency, postage, and security forces. Its Swiss Guard, with centuries of tradition, is one of the oldest active military units in the world. All of this emphasizes that Vatican City is not symbolic independence, it is tangible governance. Its population may only number in the hundreds, but its influence stretches to billions across the globe through religion, diplomacy, and culture. Despite its limited size, Vatican City attracts millions of visitors each year. Tourists come to witness the splendor of St. Peter's Basilica, the treasures of the Vatican museums, and the artistry of the Sistine Chapel. In mere moments, they pass from Italy into another nation entirely, yet many may not reflect on the extraordinary reality of entering the world's smallest country. Here, geography turns expectations upside down. A park designed for leisure in New York vastly outpaces it in scale, but the Vatican demonstrates how power, history, and identity can transcend physical boundaries. And while this example shows influence built within the smallest of footprints, other landscapes reveal the opposite. Territories where size is measured in vast natural abundance, defined not by land, but by water. The country of 2 million lakes. Canada's geography is defined less by its land than by its water. No other country on Earth contains as many lakes, and by a wide margin. These lakes stretch across forests, plains, and tundra, forming an aquatic landscape that influences everything from the environment to daily life. For Canada, freshwater isn't just a resource, it is the backbone of its national identity. By 2025, advances in satellite mapping and geographic information systems have made it easier to confirm what was long understood. Canada holds the majority of the world's freshwater lakes. More than 60% of all such lakes lie within its borders. They range from countless smaller pools scattered across boreal wilderness to immense inland seas like Lake Superior, which alone dwarfs many entire nations in size. The result is a country whose physical shape, ecosystems, and culture are tied indelibly to water. These lakes' moderate climate, by cooling summers and softening winter extremes, creating regional weather patterns that ripple far beyond their shores. They provide the source of rivers that sustain farmland, feed hydroelectric systems, and supply drinking water to cities across the country. Animal habitats depend on their rhythms, with fish, birds, and mammals adapted to an environment where water is woven into the landscape at every turn. For indigenous communities, lakes are not just natural features, but living parts of cultural knowledge, spirituality, and subsistence. Generations have traveled, fished, and built their identity from the networks of lakes that shape the land. Tourism is equally tied to these waters. Every summer, Canadians migrate to cottage country to fish, paddle, and swim. International visitors are drawn to the vastness of the Great Lakes, some of the busiest freshwater shipping routes in the world, while inland vacations revolve around smaller lakes that dot the forests like mirrored fragments of sky.